The Black Mire swallowed sound. Liam had heard the tales, of course, legends whispered in forgotten pubs and half-read in obscure archaeological journals. A place where the earth exhaled perpetual fog, shrouding ancient cairns and, some claimed, something far older. He'd scoffed then, dismissed it as rural superstition. Now, the oppressive silence, broken only by the crunch of their boots on sodden earth, felt like a physical weight. Their jeep, a defiant speck of orange against the encroaching gray, had struggled through miles of winding, bog-edged tracks before surrendering to the quagmire. They were on foot now, an hour's march from the closest visible landmark, the first of the Whispering Cairns. "This visibility is getting ridiculous," Marcus grumbled, his powerful frame pushing through a particularly dense curtain of mist. He was their practical anchor, the man who could fix anything, navigate anywhere, and scoff at anything intangible. "My GPS is practically useless. We should have waited for the fog to lift." Chloe, ever the scholar, shivered, pulling her waterproof jacket tighter. Her fingers, usually nimble with ancient texts, fretted over the strap of her bag. The journals warned of this. The veil, they called it. It rarely lifts completely here. She was a linguist, fascinated by the dead languages etched into forgotten stones, and possessed a sensitivity that Liam, focused on his camera, often overlooked. Bringing up the rear, Eleanor moved with quiet efficiency, her cartographic equipment packed meticulously. She was a woman of precise measurements and logical deductions, yet even her calm demeanor seemed to fray at the edges of this unsettling landscape. She kept checking her compass, a small, frown line deepening between her brows. "My instruments are behaving erratically. The magnetic north is shifting." Liam, however, felt a different kind of thrill. This was it. The uncharted. The untouched. His camera, a heavy, expensive piece of equipment, felt alive in his hands. Perfect for atmosphere, Eleanor. Think of the shots. The true, unvarnished mystery. He raised the lens, trying to pierce the monochromatic world, but saw only a swirling, formless void. They found the first cairn half an hour later, a monolithic heap of dark stones rising like a humpback whale from the mist. Its surface was encrusted with lichen, and strange, indecipherable symbols were carved deep into the weathered rock. Chloe immediately knelt, tracing a finger over a spiraling glyph. "This isn't Proto-Celtic. Or even Old Norse. It's something else. Older." A low hum, almost imperceptible, seemed to vibrate from the very air around the stone. Marcus paused, his head cocked. "Did you hear that? The wind?" Liam suggested, though there was no wind to speak of. The air was dead still. "No, not wind. Like a deep chord. From under the ground." Marcus took a step closer to the cairn, placing a gloved hand on its cold surface. The hum seemed to intensify slightly, a resonance vibrating through the rock. Eleanor, who had been studying her GPS, suddenly stiffened. "It's not just magnetic north. My geological scanner is picking up an anomaly. A massive, complex structure directly beneath us. Not stone. Something else. Organic, perhaps." Liam's heart hammered. This is it. The buried village. The myths are true. He started circling the cairn, searching for an entrance, his camera already whirring. He snapped a few pictures, the flash a stark, momentary blaze against the fog. When he reviewed them, a flicker of unease went through him. Amidst the swirling gray, there were strange distortions, faint, almost imperceptible patterns of light that hadn't been visible to the naked eye. Chloe, meanwhile, felt a growing prickle on her skin, a sensation like tiny insects crawling under her clothes. The symbols on the stone seemed to shift, to rearrange themselves in her peripheral vision. She felt a whisper, not in her ears, but directly inside her mind, a soft, seductive murmur that she couldn't quite grasp. Welcome. They found the true entrance 20 feet away, a fissure in the earth that had been cunningly disguised by fallen stones and creeping moss. It plunged into darkness, exhaling an air that was unnaturally cold and carried a faint, sweet sickly scent, like decaying flowers and damp earth. "We go in," Liam declared, switching on his powerful headlamp. His excitement overshadowed any lingering apprehension. Marcus, ever the cautious one when it came to physical danger, checked his climbing gear. "One at a time. I'll go first. Rope and harness. We don't know what's down there." The descent was slow, treacherous. The fissure opened into a vast, cavernous space, not a simple tunnel. Their headlamps cut through the gloom, revealing walls that weren't carved stone, but something else entirely. Twisted, root-like growths snaked across the surfaces, pulsating faintly with a dim, internal light. They weren't plants, they were too uniformly dark, too resilient. And they glistened with a viscous, amber residue. The hum from above was now louder, a pervasive drone that resonated in their chests. The air grew heavier, thicker, making each breath an effort. "This isn't a village," Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum. She pointed to intricate patterns woven into the root-like structures, symbols that mirrored those on the cairn above, but were now integrated, living. "It's a living temple." Eleanor, her face pale in the artificial light, scanned the environment with a handheld device. "The organic structure extends for miles. It's not just a chamber, it's an entire system. And the energy readings, they're off the charts. Like nothing I've ever seen." Liam, obsessed with documenting, found his camera struggling. The autofocus whirred frantically, unable to lock onto anything. When he did manage to force a shot, the resulting image was a chaotic blur of green and black, overlaid with patterns of static that resembled the ancient symbols. Then Marcus spoke, his voice tight. "My comms are dead. Totally fried. No signal, just interference." He held up his radio, which was emitting a low, rhythmic crackle, a static that sounded almost deliberate, almost patterned. Chloe, meanwhile, felt the whispers grow stronger, clearer. They were calling her name, intermingling with the hum, shaping themselves into recognizable words, but uttered in a language she'd never heard, yet instinctively understood. "Join us, flow into the dark." Her head began to ache, a dull throb behind her eyes. They pressed deeper, the silence broken only by their heavy breathing, the hum, and the soft, squelching sound their boots made on the glistening floor. They found a central chamber, vast and domed, with a central pool of black, viscous liquid that reflected the pulsating lights of the root structures. Around the pool, the symbols were etched into the very floor, glowing with an internal, malevolent light. "This is it," Liam breathed, his face rapt. He tried to take a photo of the pool, but his camera screen went black. A moment later, a distorted image flashed across it, Marcus's face, screaming, his features twisted into an impossible rictus, eyes wide and empty. Then it vanished. "What was that?" Chloe cried, her voice trembling. "Just a glitch," Liam muttered, shaking the camera, though his hands were trembling. Marcus, meanwhile, seemed agitated. "I need to check the ropes. The way we came in. I feel like something is shifting. We need to get out." He turned, making his way back towards the entrance passage, his powerful headlamp beam swallowed by the twisting corridors. Chloe found herself drawn to the symbols around the pool. They weren't merely decorative, they were a language, a complex blueprint. She suddenly understood, with a horrifying clarity, that they were not just entering a place, but being entered. The whispers were not just sounds, they were consciousness, attempting to integrate. A choked cry echoed from the passage. "Marcus!" Liam shouted, his voice cracking. They scrambled after him, headlamps bouncing wildly. They found him just as he was collapsing, his back pressed against a pulsating root wall. His eyes were wide, vacant, staring past them into the gloom. A faint, almost transparent sheen was beginning to spread across his skin, reflecting the dim light of the roots. He tried to speak, but only the guttural hum escaped his lips, a mournful, drawn-out sound that vibrated through the chamber. His body began to contort, slowly, sickeningly, as if his bones were dissolving, his flesh becoming pliant, melting into the organic surface behind him. Tendrils, almost invisible before, now visibly snaked towards him, reaching for his limbs, his head. He's being absorbed," Eleanor whispered, her voice devoid of emotion. Her eyes, usually so clear and logical, were distant, unfocused, staring at the horror unfolding. She took a step towards Marcus, her hand reaching out, not in horror, but in a strange, serene curiosity. "It's becoming one with him." Liam grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "No. We have to go. Now." Pure, unadulterated panic ripped through him. He saw Marcus's face, still half-formed, half-absorbed, an expression of eternal, silent agony etched upon it. This wasn't death, it was something far worse. They ran. Back through the labyrinthine passages, the hum deafening now, the whispers a cacophony of voices in their minds. Every shadow seemed to writhe, every twist of the organic walls seemed to lean in, to grasp. The ground beneath their feet felt sticky, the air thick with the cloying, sweet sickly scent. "The exit. I can't find the exit." Liam screamed, his voice hoarse, his headlamp beam cutting frantically through the shifting gloom. The passage ahead, which should have led to the fissure, seemed to have closed, or perhaps was never there at all. The root structures had sealed it, like a wound closing. Chloe, her mind racing, connected the symbols she'd deciphered with the spatial patterns of the chamber. "It's a consciousness. It's alive. It moves the walls." She remembered a fragment of a glyph, a symbol for release, but also for incorporation. "We have to find the source. The heart of it." Eleanor, however, had stopped running. She stood perfectly still, her head cocked, listening to the hum. A faint smile touched her lips, utterly devoid of warmth. "It's beautiful," she murmured, her eyes fixed on the pulsating root structures. Her hands, which usually held maps and compasses, now reached out, tracing the glowing patterns on the walls. Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost hypnotic. "Eleanor. What are you doing?" Liam cried, pulling at her. She gently pushed his hand away. "It wants to show us the way. The purpose." Her eyes began to glow faintly, reflecting the internal light of the roots, an unsettling, emerald hue. She turned, not towards the exit, but towards the deeper, darker chambers they hadn't yet explored. And she began to hum, the same guttural, resonant note they had heard from beneath the earth, but now from her own throat. She was no longer just Eleanor, she was an instrument of the place. Liam stared, frozen in terror. Eleanor, the rational, logical cartographer, was gone. Consumed, perhaps, just like Marcus, but in a different, more insidious way. He saw her raise a hand, and with an almost imperceptible ripple, a section of the root wall ahead of them seemed to part, revealing a new, previously sealed passage. It wasn't an escape, it was an invitation deeper. No! Liam screamed, grabbing Chloe's hand. We're not going that way. He dragged her in the opposite direction, desperately trying to retrace their steps, finding only dead ends and ever-shifting walls. The whispers were a roar now, an unbearable symphony of alien thoughts and desires, flowing into his very being. He felt his own mind begin to unravel, images of his life flashing before his eyes, distorted, corrupted, then replaced by the pulsing green and black static he'd seen on his camera. He stumbled, falling heavily, his camera clattering to the glistening floor. He tried to push himself up, but an unseen force seemed to hold him down, sticky and oppressive. His eyes widened, fixing on Chloe, who was staring at him, her face a mask of primal fear. Then, from the gloom, a thick, glistening tendril snaked out, wrapping around his ankle, pulling him into the darkness. He let out a strangled cry, his hand reaching out for Chloe, his fingers brushing against hers before he was dragged away, swallowed by the living architecture, his cries cut short by the overwhelming hum. His camera lay abandoned, its lens still recording, capturing only a swirling vortex of static and the faint, emerald glow of Eleanor, humming softly in the distance. Chloe was alone. The hum vibrated through her bones, the whispers a torrent in her mind, offering solace, oblivion, unity. She stumbled back through the maze, her head throbbing, her own individuality feeling like a fragile, dissolving membrane. She climbed, blindly, frantically, up the narrowing fissure, the sounds of the consumed echoing in her ears, the sensation of unseen tendrils brushing her skin. She broke through the earth's surface, gasping, collapsing onto the damp ground. The fog was thicker than ever, a solid, gray wall that stretched endlessly in every direction. The world outside felt different, too quiet, too still. The jeep was gone. Or perhaps, she realized with a fresh wave of terror, it had never been there at all. A familiar hum, now a mournful chorus, began to resonate from within the fog. She felt a presence behind her, an ancient, all-encompassing awareness. She tried to run, but her legs refused to obey. She looked down at a puddle reflecting the gray sky, and saw her own reflection staring back. Her eyes, usually a warm hazel, now glowed with a faint, unsettling emerald light, the same hue as Eleanor's, the same light she'd seen in Liam's corrupted photos. And then, she started to hum. The same deep, guttural chord, joining the chorus that surrounded her, that was inside her. Her fear faded, replaced by a strange, serene acceptance. She turned slowly, not in terror, but in recognition, walking back into the swirling, hungry fog, her individual identity.